This is Off Track.
Being in a bad mood is my job. I don't know that you can take that away from me, because I certainly can't be the happy-go-lucky guy.
I think we just all be angry today.
Okay.
Jim's angry because he's been sleeping too much, which is weird.
It's been a weekend.
James is angry because he's in Daytona. I'm not angry because I'm in Hawaii. So.
Dude, if you even try to be angry about anything right now, I'll throttle you.
The only thing I'm angry about is it's 8 a.m. here, so I don't love doing this, but it's okay.
But I feel like even on vacation, you're the kind of guy that gets up at 6 and goes for a bike ride anyway.
Well, God forbid I do that and talk about that on here.
You know what's odd about that? Mark never responded. So either
is that odd, or is that very predictable?
So either he got called out and embarrassed, or he held true to his threat to never listen again. And either way, I don't care.
We win either way.
Yeah,
it's not really a thing. Well, let's start with the good. Let's just start with the guy. I just need someone to tell me something good. Alex, how awesome is Hawaii right now?
It's pretty amazing. I mean, have you been? Have you been to here?
I have, but I was a kid, and it was a very long time ago. Okay. So,
So no.
For all intents and purposes, no.
Hawaii is everything that you would expect it to be. It's sunny and 75 degrees with a slight coastal breeze that rolls in. The food's amazing. People are amazing. It's just, you're immediately relaxed when you get here. The views kind of anywhere you are on the island are 10 out of 10. Some of the resorts are also 10 out of 10 in terms of the experience that you have when you're there. The first day, because you're jet lagged, we did the 3 a.m. wake up call and drove an hour and a half to the top of Haleakala, which is it was a volcano. It is now a dormant volcano, and you kind of watch the sunrise, which is kind of the traditional tourist photo you see of the sun coming up as you're above the cloud layer, which is cool. Very weird to have it be 25 degrees on the top of the mountain when it's 75 degrees everywhere else, but elevation's a hell of a thing. We went to a luau, which was cool. We tried to go to one that wasn't a fancy resort one, more kind of picnic tables and stuff, and more of the traditional feel, potluck
the local
style,
vibe.
The local vibe, which was great. We've obviously done some pool days. We're recording this on Monday, but we're going to go snorkeling. We're going to play some golf. What else have we done? There's another activity that we've done as a group. But no, it's been amazing. Very happy and grateful to be here. And that about sums it up. Don't want to leave in a couple of days.
Have you been resort hopping, or are you just in one place, but going for lunches at other places or whatever?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One other thing that I did was, so I rented a bike when I got here, and there's 2 rides that I'm doing. One I already did, and it's called the West Maui Loop. So the island's split into, everywhere's split into west and east, but there's a specific west loop that goes around an entire mountain. It's the whole coastline, and it's rated as one of the top 10 cycling routes in the world, just from not difficulty, but just beauty and road quality and that sort of thing. And so I did that on one of the first mornings we got here, and it was unbelievable. It was so cool just for 3.5 hours basically to be staring at coastline, right? And you're kind of on these winding roads, as you would imagine, single lane roads and stuff, not very busy on that side of the island, and you're just riding along these cliffs and watching the waves come in, and you're watching whales because it's whale season. Whales are breaching, and it's just you don't even realize that you're working out. You just are, your jaw's on the floor the entire time. So that was pretty cool.
That was the pictures from that almost made me want to go cycling. That's probably a bike ride that I would do,
right? Just
because of the sheer beauty of it.
A little different than cycling in Westfield.
Yeah. Or on a Peloton.
Right.
On a bike trainer in my basement looking at an iPad with Zwift on it.
Yeah, dumb. Not cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Less cool. Was it a lot of elevation, or was it?
Yeah, so
you're on the side of a mountain.
So it was interesting.
But I wasn't sure.
So it was 4,000 feet total, but they came in 200 feet increments because it was a lot of kickers. So it was almost an interval workout, which is pretty cool. The only the only bummer was like I couldn't. It was damp that morning, so like the downhills, you had to leave like a pretty big margin, so that wasn't as fun as it could have been. Also, like it doesn't need to be that fun because I don't need to try and break something on a bike because people like to do that. So
it's happened. And
yeah.
also, like with that view, the goal isn't actually to go as fast as possible.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
actually kind of nice to take an extra couple minutes.
Exactly.
And enjoy
So, very, very, very good. All right, James, you're back in a race car, man. So
Yeah.
should we talk about that first, or we should talk about IndyCar Content Day? Because I think people want to hear about all of the above.
Let's talk about IndyCar Content Day, and then we can end with Daytona because it's coming up.
Okay. Order of operations. Got it. So
yeah,
IndyCar Content Day. It was, I think everyone had this idea of what it was going to be based on what we all saw with Joseph's commercial and what we've all been seeing with Fox and everything. First of all,
so genuinely, you went into it thinking it was going to be different just based on that stuff.
I thought it was going to be different than NBC. I thought it was going to be better. What I walked into, I could have never fathomed. Right. So essentially, you get your schedule and it's the normal like social media rooms. It's the normal local news rooms. It's NTT, Firestone Partner series stuff, like all that sort of stuff.
Screen,
exactly.
Social, yeah.
And then there was this block on everyone's schedule, depending on the time, right? There was like 3 hours of just Fox hits. And you're like, well, what on earth could we be doing for Fox? Like, yeah, you're going to do like the step and repeats and you're going to have a video board in the background. You're going to be doing these things. But like, how is this going to take that amount of time?
What is a step and repeat?
And then you get there. A step and repeat is
backgrounds with logos and stuff for photos and things like that.
So what I walked into was essentially a movie set with the magnitude of equipment, with the amount of people. I heard from one of the Fox ladies that there was 40 people there that were Fox employees, and they had another 60 that were independent contractors. So they had 100 people here for 2 days of content capturing across 30 drivers if you count some of the 500 guys, right? And there was, I think, 5 different studio setups, stage setups that involved drones being flown indoors, that involved some of the most like when I've done a couple things on TV. So have you, James, spent some time out in LA, and like when directors and producers are like the real deal because they've got that like they're dressed the part. They have that sort of, they carry themselves a certain way. Every single person was that guy, right? Or girl. They were professionals in what they did. They know exactly what they were looking for. This is the same team that is going to be doing all of the player stuff for the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. This is the same group that has done all of their highest level production for sporting events. They brought that to IndyCar. So this is just another example of like what they're doing. So I was blown away by it. It made Content Day for me like pretty cool because it's hard to complain too much when you're getting to do these things that as an athlete is like, that's what the big boys are doing, right? And you get to kind of play in that sandbox a little bit. And that was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? Like a lot of like the stage shoots that they had all the drivers do, and they even did some stuff with Will Townsend and I, which was kind of funny. But those are all the things that you see, like, bumpers going to commercial or when a driver gets introed. And it's like you see it on football and you see it on other sports where, it's the athlete, there's some cool background, there's smoke, there's strobe lights, all that stuff. At the end of the day, right, like if you're watching that and it's a simple background or a super elaborate background with a cool drone shot, is that going to affect your like level of fandom of the sport? Not necessarily, but what Fox did there and what it shows to everybody involved is just the unbelievable commitment level they have to making this successful and having it, as you say, Alex, on par with their Super Bowl productions and their Daytona 500 productions and, like everything else that they do big. It was incredible to see. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, I had no idea and like what was coming. We were not in the loop on what the plans were for media day. And Townsend and I walked in and we were like, wow, oh, all right, it's a lot of people here.
Mm.
And he said I was floored at how many people they had and like the level of equipment and all that stuff. So the commitment to making it cool was high to quite high.
So I got invited to a dinner after content day with a couple of other drivers and two of the main Fox guys, right? I think the main guy of Fox Sports, and he was sharing his vision for IndyCar. Grew up in Indiana area, grew up a fan of the sport and all this stuff, and his big thing is something that was so refreshing to hear because it's something we've been talking about on this show and off this show for years. And he says he's spent more time than he cares to admit watching F1 races, watching NASCAR races, watching IndyCar races. And the biggest thing that he feels that IndyCar misses compared to everyone else is just the beauty of the show quality, right? That's from graphics, that's from intros, outros, that's from, some of the track maintenance, granted, but he himself as Fox, which is the TV partner, is putting pressure on Roger and IndyCar and promoters to be like, we need tracks to have a standard in terms of what they look like because it'll make the TV look better. And that's something that's important to us. So they're going down paths as a partner of this, that they have the same level of desire for this to succeed. And they have the same level of belief that we all have that the underlying product is the best in the world. It just hasn't been showcased properly for a multitude of reasons. Right. And so
right.
to have that like love for the sport, not just this is a business transaction and we get the Indy 500 and whatever, right? The actual desire to create something and bring it back to the golden era of when this guy was watching IndyCar is really, really amazing. So yeah, man.
It's gonna be good, man. It's exciting. It's exciting. Like we've been part of some big meetings talking about some of the ideas that they've got for the broadcast. And remember, it's not just for the race broadcast either. Every session is on TV now, right? Like it's on either FS1 or FS2, all the practices, qualifying. Obviously, all the races are going to be on Fox Network. We are, before you guys ask, because I know there's a lot of people thinking this right now and have already reached out with this topic. If you don't have general cable and you don't just get Fox Network on your TV, how can you watch? What's insane is I've learned, because I didn't really know either, there are so many ways. Fox Sports is like tied into so many packages that you have no idea it's part of. Like there's a very good chance you already have it and don't realize it. So we're putting together a little like social campaign to kind of explain how to watch it, because I guarantee you most people listening can already do it without having to spend $1 more than you're already spending. But that said, like I said, all of these things are going to be on TV. And we've got some really cool ideas cooking for how to make practice shows a little more engaging and entertaining for people at home. Because, yeah, man, IndyCar practice is not always very exciting. That's cold hard facts, right? That's just the truth. So the group is really motivated. Will's come with some great ideas. Townsend's had some great ideas. We're kind of putting them all together. And I think what's so cool about the production team at Fox right now is they're willing to try anything. So we're going to spend the first half of this season just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And if you guys have ideas, hey, hit up at Ask Off Track. Let us know, because it's literally like it's a blank sheet of paper, man. It's pretty exciting. We could kind of redefine motorsports broadcasts in North America with some of the ideas that are floating around. So it's cool. It's exciting to be a part of. And St. Pete, on one hand, can't come soon enough. On the other hand, I would like even more time to prepare and continue to develop these ideas and make it cool. But hey, look, time doesn't stop.
So I have a question. So you've been doing the TV broadcast thing for several years now, right? And I think that, in the beginning for you, it was just something that it was, I don't want to say easy, because that job is very, very difficult, but like your understanding of the sport and the ins and outs of it is so deep that like I feel like the research that you would have to do or the preparation you have to do in the beginning was probably fairly limited until you realize like, okay, these are things I need to know and facts that I need to be able to get in and all this sort of thing. Now that like everything is ramping up to like an extreme, do you feel like now there's probably a little bit more pressure on you as in your role to perform because like everyone needs to elevate themselves a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, bigger audience, right?
Yeah.
So it is the goal, and if you have a bigger audience, there's more people criticizing. So you do have to do that. But also as the audience grows, and this is one of the important things that's come up a lot in our meetings is as the audience gets bigger, a lot of that growth is going to come from new fans. That's the hope, right? There's the million plus existing IndyCar fans that know the general, A, B's, and C's of IndyCar, but we hope every week we're growing this fan base and getting new people to tune in, which means you're going to have a lot of people, hopefully this year, watching IndyCar for the very first time. In some cases, maybe motorsports for the very first time. And so all of these things that are just like obvious, part of our vernaculars, part of our daily, conversations are brand new to these people. And so making sure that we explain certain things over and over and from a very basic level and not getting too inside baseball, Townsend and I for sure can get lost in because we are both so into this, like, involved in the sport and ingratiated in it. We can sometimes go down paths where him and I are having a conversation that we would be having, sitting at the bar, but Aunt Linda at home is not going to have any idea what we're talking
Right.
about. And so striking that balance has always been a tough part of the job. But again, as this audience grows and hopefully becomes newer and newer, it's going to be an even more important part. So that's just something we're stressing a lot is focusing on the things that are, really important kind of basics to cover and how do we cover them in a way that is easily digestible for somebody new to the sport.
Yeah, I mean, that makes
So,
a lot
yeah.
of sense. And it's cool. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you guys talked about it on last Tuesday's episode, but to have Will come in, right? Like he's such a personality and is so passionate about all motorsports, but specifically IndyCar. It's really cool to see him kind of make that leap, right? Because I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision for him I mean, this is a job in a completely different country. There's a lot of factors that go into that. He's leaving behind, a pretty good gig, right? One that he has become like borderline famous for, right? And a very important part of F1 TV and the Formula One paddock, right? To completely leave all that behind and kind of take a little bit of a chance also just goes to show like his understanding and vision for where the sport can go because of Fox. So I'm excited, man. I think getting to sit down with you guys and which was weird. I will say, of all the things Fox did correctly, the fact that we all had our little sit down in a service hallway, like what happened there?
Yeah. Right. So the table. So yeah, we requested. Look, traditionally on content day, while we would attend, we would kind of just walk around. Like there was the rooms, like when it was NBC had their room and the drivers would come in for their interviews or their social clips or whatever. And you could kind of be there. We weren't really usually doing the interviews. We were just kind of there to observe, to interact with people, kind of whatever. To judge. But then you're sort of at the mercy of the flow of the day, and you might run into someone in the hallway. They might have 30 seconds. They might have 10 minutes. You never really know. And so it was requested that we had our own kind of station that drivers could be brought to have like a 10-minute window just to sit down and talk. The problem is really the very last minute ask. And as you saw, a lot of room was taken up with the lights and stages and smoke machines and stuff.
But we were in a convention center. I feel like there would have been space for a table for 4.
I don't disagree. I was trying to cover whoever it was gave us that table and thought that was the place to do it. But it was funny though, because there were legitimately people I didn't even see because we just spent our whole time in that back hallway. And I thought people were kind of using that back hallway a little bit more than they evidently were. But yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
It was all right. Well, we'll talk later.
I had one thing I wanted to bring up because just not to jump back, but on the Will Buxton stuff, we got a lot of comments on YouTube, or not a lot, but a few comments on YouTube and a few on like Reddit and other places where it said, of course, Will Buxton is saying that IndyCar is great now. That's his job. And that's, of course, he's going to be towing the company line. Which, like, if you've listened to a while, we had Will on before it was his job. The guy loves IndyCar and has. This isn't like a new thing that he's just like towing the company line.
But also,
he's been a fan of IndyCar.
He should.
Yeah,
like,
but I'm
why
just saying,
are we upset?
Yeah, but the people who are just like, oh, it's not genuine. He doesn't really care about IndyCar. It's just a paycheck. It's like, well, you're wrong. Like he's been about this for 100%.
A while. All right, Mark, simmer down.
I just wanted to address that.
I mean, yeah. No, I mean, he's talked about it very openly for a long time.
He talked about it on here years ago.
Right. When NBC had the IndyCar and F1 rights at the same time, he was working for NBC on the F1 stuff. He came to a couple IndyCar races and talked about how much he would love to work for the series and like work on the broadcast. So, that's just blatantly not true. That's just somebody hating to hate. But no, it is huge, man. As you said, Alex. I mean, he made his career in F1 largely geographically, right? It's what made sense, but he's always had a passion for IndyCar. And I will say he's doing a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of research to make sure that he is, up to date and knowledgeable about the history of the sport and, what's gone on in the recent future and the recent past, the distant past. He's definitely a student of the sport anyway. I mean, he writes books about motorsports, right? This is kind of his jam. So he's super excited. I think he's going to bring a very different kind of tone and vibe to the whole thing, which again, I think is maybe something that we need because we're trying to appeal to a different audience now, a younger audience, and that like old school motorsports broadcast way of doing things might not be the best way to do it for the future generations. We will find out, but it is huge and we're very excited and he's very excited. So everybody should be very excited.
Speaking of exciting, Daytona.
Daytona.
Yeah. Rain-tona. It came true again.
Rain-tona.
All right, James, start from the beginning.
All right.
How is it driving a race car again? What's the Italian horse? That's what it is, right? Or bull. What's the Italian bull like? Does it sound as cool inside the car as it sounds outside the car? What's BOP like? What's going on? Yeah.
All right. Here's the skinny on Daytona. So as you guys know, the FAF thing came together late. The car arrived at the shop brand new from the factory, I think December 15th or 16th. So we had less time to get it together than we did last year with the McLaren, which as you know
it seems impossible that's possible.
It seems impossible to have less time and still make it. But again, mad credit to all the crew at FAF. I mean, there were some days they were leaving the shop at 5 a.m.
Is it all the same dudes? Mostly?
A lot of the same mechanics, a lot of the same mechanics. Okay. We definitely had a couple people that we lost in the shuffle, but a lot of the same guys you remember from last year. And again, marathon, 3 hours of sleep back at the shop, just thrashing to get this thing together. And then an equal amount of credit has to go to Lamborghini and the support that their customer racing program gives to the team, because that thing showed up, it fit together, it runs, it's easier to work on, the guys really enjoy it. And, we threw that thing together, got it in time for a quick shakedown at a straight line on Monday, I think. And then
Monday before it was on track?
Yeah. And then maybe it was Tuesday, and its first on track session ran flawlessly and was P1. So, I mean, credit to Lambo. They put together a hell of a product, and they've got a great support system that comes along with it.
Okay.
And
so, are you guys good? I have not paid any attention.
No, you're in Maui. You should not be paying any attention to the roar. Dude, it's the roar.
I know, but
I think we're okay. Yeah,
okay.
I think we're okay. So my three teammates, Caldarelli, Mapelli, Jordan Pepper, all factory Lambo drivers. So these guys have tons of time in the car. They're like, balance is pretty good. They're working on little things, but we're in the ballpark.
Okay.
Our engineer is a guy that's been working on Lambos for a while. He knows the car. The drivers all know the car. Like, I'm the most outsider of this.
Right.
I'm even more of an outsider than last year. And
Is
and it's and
is it easier to get in and out of asking for a friend?
you know what? I don't know if it's just I got so used to getting in and out of the McLaren, but I'll say this. It took me a lot less time to get to like a reasonable
Right.
ingress and egress than the
You didn't
McLaren.
start
So
at
yes,
60
I would
seconds.
say correct. It did not start with you and me at a minute and a half trying to get that driver change done.
Got it.
So no, we're by the 4 changes we were within, we were at 20 seconds. So
Okay.
like we're there. It's different to drive. It does some things better, some things worse,
Mhm.
but overall, it's a very good car. It's very, it doesn't do anything weird. It doesn't try to kill you. It's just a pretty good car. What's so wild though about IMSA 2025 is this whole torque sensor thing. And guys, I'm going to get a little bit inside baseball here. If you're not a big sports car fan, this might sound boring to you, but if you want to just hear a ridiculous story, then stick around. Okay, so we've talked a lot about BOP, balance of performance. It's what happens in sports cars. It's how you can have Lambos racing Mercedes, racing Lexuses, racing BMWs, racing Fords, racing Ferraris, whatever, right? You have to work on this formula that kind of keeps all the cars within a range of lap time, right? And of course, always looking for an advantage. Any and every team would try to find ways around that BOP and try to like find ways to have it bias them a little bit and have a bit of an advantage. You'd sandbag at tests, and the series would try to look at your data and whatever. There's all sorts of tricks. Well, there's these things called torque sensors that came out for 2025. They were out last year in Europe, and they essentially sit on the drive shaft of the car. So the part that basically takes the power from the gearbox and puts it through the wheel to the ground. And you can't cheat it, right? Like that's just a hard sensor. It's just telling you how much power is basically going to the wheels. And so nothing that you can do sort of turning your own power down can really circumvent it. And so this was supposed to be the kind of like magic cure for BOP. The way this system works is a little bit more complex than I originally understood. So in the simplest terms I can kind of come up with, there is an amount of power or torque that you are allowed to put through to the tires, okay? If you start going over the amount, the sensor is tied to an electronics box that automatically, in real time, turns the engine down and essentially penalizes you for getting too close to or over the torque limit. Where it gets challenging is it's not as simple as, because it's just tied to...
Before
Yes,
you go on,
Alex.
is that at all the same as like an overboost in an IndyCar?
In terms of how it feels?
In
or
terms
like
of
how
what they're trying to do. So in IndyCar, they're turbo engines, right? So engine manufacturers, engine techs are trying to push the boost limit as far as they can. But IndyCar has software in there that if you're over the boost target for too long or within too much of a consecutive frequency, it cuts the turbo off essentially, and you get this like penalty of like the car slows down. Is that what they're trying to do to prevent?
Same philosophy.
Okay.
Same philosophy. The difference is they do it very gradually. So like in an IndyCar, when you get a boost penalty, it's like you feel like you hit the brakes, right? You feel like somebody hit the pit lane speed limiter and your speed just kind of stops for a second and then the engine kind of goes back to normal. How it works in IMSA is it just sort of like tunes down the motor. So like you just feel the slight reduction in power.
Okay, so that seems, I don't see the problem yet.
Where it gets weird is you can't just like set your engine at a power that keeps the torque below the, thing and off you go.
Okay.
Because the torque that goes to the wheel when the car is fully loaded and accelerating in a straight line is different than if the car has maybe loaded to one side and the inside wheel is maybe getting a little extra torque because there's less resistance on it. Or say you strike a curb and the wheel is momentarily up in the air, or you get wheel spin and the traction's not the same. all of those events negatively affect the torque output and push you up towards the limit. So that means that as a driver, you're now having to like avoid curb strikes, avoid sliding the back of the car, avoid any wheel spin on power down. And while some of those things you don't ideally do for lap time anyway, curb strikes you certainly do, but you can drive through them and drive around them, and maybe the penalty, you lose a little bit of acceleration, but now you lose that little bit of acceleration, let's say with wheel spin, plus you then get the engine backed off a little bit. And so it's forced you to have this very almost conservative driving style. And there's a bar on the dash so you can see where you are in the range. And you kind of have to try to drive in a way that keeps you below a certain threshold to make sure you're not losing power, which is so important at Daytona.
Does it reset each lap, or is it a rolling average?
It's a rolling average.
So you can't like take it easy through all the way up into the bus stop and then just hammer the bus stop.
Oh, no, because it doesn't reset at start finish.
That's horrifying.
So sometimes you have to drive. Like, look, there are certain things you can't avoid. There are bumps on the racetrack that you just can't avoid, and they spike it, and so you need to have like a margin just built in for the track.
Where would you, hearing all that, would you not just turn up all of the TC levels, the traction control levels, and the slip levels, and everything, the thresholds, to prevent that from happening? Because that sounds like it would be less of a penalty than a torque reduction. Or is it really the same?
To get the TC to a point where it's like completely eliminating wheel spin, it's actually way bigger penalty than the loss of power.
Okay.
So it's tricky. Now, different manufacturers.
How is this managing BOP though?
Because everybody's kind of given the same amount of like power that they can use. You almost have to look at it like from an energy standpoint. It's almost like a Formula E.
That's fine. But like still a Lamborghini is going to be very different in its cornering capabilities than a Mustang. So like, yeah, great. You have this torque limit, but.
Yeah. But they still have the weight limits, and they still have
this
all
is
those
just
other things.
In addition to all of those other things.
This is to control the engine side, right? So like used to have rev limits and restrictors and stuff like that. I think all that stuff's gone now. I don't actually know this, if I'm totally honest. I think all that stuff's kind of being now kind of deferred to this. But like fuel capacity and all that other stuff. Then that's the other thing. There's also now an energy tank, like in the GTPs, that means nothing. It's an arbitrary thing that they've tossed in there. And that is kind of like an easier way for them, I guess, to control. So one of the things that used to happen, right? And you saw this, you were a part of this when you were driving with Penske and Wayne Taylor. Fuel capacity is something they use to control BOP, right? Mm-hmm. And so at a given race, you guys were on a strategy that required you to save a bunch of fuel. Mm-hmm. And so you went longer. Mm-hmm. And then IMSA was like, oh, well, you clearly have too much fuel because you went 4 laps longer than these guys. It's like, no. Mm-hmm. We did that because we drove that way. Like, and you got penalized for it, even though it was just you.
Yep.
I think in an effort to try to control that, they now have this virtual energy tank that, like, in theory can run out before you run out of fuel, but you have to pit when it's empty or you get a penalty.
I'm sorry. So there's just this phantom scale.
Yeah. It's just like a little thing that means nothing, but it can totally ruin your day if you don't listen to it.
So if your phantom fuel is empty and you don't pit because you're not actually out of fuel, what happens?
I think there's a penalty. Again, this is I'm learning all this stuff, but there is some sort of penalty.
Can you short phantom fuel?
Yes. It's like the GTP. It plugs in with the fuel when you actually plug in, but you're filling up two different things.
Not really. You're filling up one thing.
Yeah, you're filling up one thing, and then you're like you're charging another thing.
What I love
but
about
not really
this
charging because there's no battery.
I don't understand this at all. Like I don't
No.
even understand the core concept of this. What I do understand is how annoyed Alex is by the concept of this.
So thrilled I'm not there.
Dude.
Just reaffirms my decision.
This is why I warned everybody. Like, this was actually more just of a conversation for Alex and I to kind of get angry about what's happening over here. It's not like, and here's the thing: we're not going to talk about it on the broadcast. Nobody's going to really know about it because nobody really cares. So it doesn't change anything. It is, I believe, just another way to sort of help IMSA control the field. I think I actually don't know all the details. We're all still kind of figuring out as we go.
Okay.
But yes, and then like sometimes you have to save energy, but the way energy is spent is different than fuel. So a traditional fuel saving is not going to save energy at the same rate as it would fuel. Because if you think about it, sorry guys, I know most people have tuned up by now. I'm sorry, but
including me, by the way. I'm just going.
So
I'm
like
just designing 3D stuff.
Lift and coast to save fuel in real life. If you lift and coast to save fake fuel, it doesn't work.
Right. So think about energy, right? If you are accelerating, you use more energy than if you're already at Vmax.
Yeah.
Right. So if you lift off, you're not using as much energy when you're already up there.
Sure.
And so by lifting, you don't save as much. For energy, you got to accelerate slowly to save energy.
Or short shift.
Like you still lift, but it doesn't have the same level of impact. Yeah. It's wild. The whole thing's wild.
Okay.
And the truth is no one's got it figured out yet. So it is going to be an interesting race because there's all these new elements that everybody's trying to wrap their head around.
So there's all these new elements that are kind of weird and confusing and certainly seemingly take a little bit of the enjoyment out of driving the race car and like pushing it to the limit and all that sort of thing.
Correct.
But at least they ruined the bus stop.
Correct. They absolutely did.
I saw the curbs look interesting there.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. They introduced these insane curves that are way bigger and way harder on the cars and whatever at a time when torque sensors now also penalize you for taking big curves. So like you can hit them. It's not comfortable, but like it can be fast. You're not going to do it all day, but you can do it. Except now if you hit it too, like if you hit it, you're also just taking away power.
So
like there are other things that I want to tell you that I keep.
I saw like some videos like of people at the bus stop, right? And that's an awesome place to watch the cars come through usually because like the cars are bouncing, it's a change of direction, you see the compression of the tire and it's awesome, right? I literally thought that someone just posted a video of like cars on outlaps, like cold tires, like installs going around the curbs. And it was like, no, that's like push laps.
You gotta like drive around them.
Yeah.
You gotta like drive around them. And then inside of these now curbs that are uncomfortably big are the massive yellow cones.
Yeah, I saw those,
of concrete. So like if you hit one of those, you're ripping a floor off a car.
Yeah.
So like they've made the bus stop a very precarious, perilous part of the racetrack. It's going to be a bit of survival.
That's going to like cause some problems for sure because like you're still going to have cars lunging people
for sure, man. And like where before, if that happened and the guy like turned in on you or something, you drop two wheels in the dirt, not great. You're probably going to scrape the floor a bit, maybe lose a dive plane or something, but like you might rip the bottom off a car. You might rip a gearbox out. It's going to be bad.
So okay, did you drive in the wet?
No, we did not go out in the wet.
So I'm really wondering how like all these torque sensors and stuff work in the wet when you're getting wheel spin to the moon.
Correct. So a huge part of it right now is all the manufacturers working on systems to help control torque internally, so that way you're not offending the sensor. Right. So it's a lot about it's torque management, right? It's just all about torque management and figuring out systems that can help with that. So these things ran in Europe in the World Endurance Championship last year. So some manufacturers have some experience with them. Some don't. Everybody's learning. Apparently Porsche's got some super trick system that helps. No shock. So they're probably going to be very good in the race, as they often are. But look, all that aside, I am very happy to be back in a race car. I am very impressed and amazed and appreciative of the massive amount of work that FAF did to get us here. I am pleasantly surprised with the amount of support from Lamborghini and my co-drivers and everything on that side of things. And at the end of the day, it's a new challenge. Is it the way I enjoy going racing the most? It is not. Having to like think about how to not spike the torque sensor is not my idea of balls to the wall, flat out fun racing. However, all drivers love a challenge, and it is a new challenge. So, we're going into it with very open minds. We know there's a lot for us to learn still, but it's exciting, man. Like I'm excited to see kind of how it plays out, because as you know, in years where there are big changes, that's a great opportunity to try to find an advantage, because at some point everybody figures it out. But until they do, someone's going to have that advantage, and you always think it's going to be you. So you try to kind of outthink the other teams and be the first one to find some trick that helps it out.
Well, there you go. Well, good luck. I look forward to not watching. But have fun. Be safe.
I'll text you at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Can I still text you for updates like I do when you're broadcasting?
Yeah, for sure.
You just won't answer this time?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, go Fox, go IndyCar. We don't have phantom fuel or weird torque spike sensors.
I mean,
so
we also got to go NBC this weekend.
I was just you took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say, if you're not in Maui on vacation, make sure to watch the Hours 24 on NBC. We do have a fun little thing going because Townsend Bell, Parker Kligerman, and myself, all part of the NBC broadcast, all in the race, and we got a little side bets going on there about that. So that's kind of fun.
So basically, it's just like a heartfelt you ABC this weekend. Like we're pro Fox, we're pro NBC, CBS, eat a just like
what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to say. Alex enjoys snorkeling and golfing and the Hawaiian sun. And next week we will talk all about the Daytona 24, Alex's flight home, and Tim's first 5K since high school.
Also, in case anybody from ABC is listening, you can hire me for writing on anything. I didn't mean it.
And CBS, PBS,
yeah.
all of it. Yeah.
C-SPAN, I'm not picky. I could use the work.
So a lot of writing on C-SPAN?
Look, man, I'll take what I can get.
All right.
This has been Off Track with Hinch and Rossi. Off Track is part of the SiriusXM Sports Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please give a 5-star rating and leave a review. Subscribe today wherever you stream your podcasts. We are at Ask Off Track on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at Hinchtown and at Alexander Rossi. If you want to follow Tim, though we have no idea why you would, he's at the Tim Durham on Twitter. Find us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel for exclusive video content. Off Track is produced by Tim Durham, and by that we mean Tim.